My name is Emily Harris. I'm 41, a clinical psychologist by profession, and a mother first, always first. My daughter, Lily, is 16. She's kind, observant, and far too wise for her age, especially when it comes to the manipulations swirling around our family. Christmas Eve used to feel magical. Now it arrives like a storm with a guest list, spreadsheets, and instructions from my mother and sister that never end. My mother, sharp and commanding in the way only matriarchs can be, believes tradition justifies tyranny. My sister Lauren thrives on control, her every word a test of obedience. And me? I've been the quiet sponsor of it all, the money, the hours, the emotional labor, stitched into a rope I can feel tightening around my wrists every December. By late afternoon, I was carrying trays of ingredients to my mother's apartment, testing ovens, arranging everything down to the labels for gluten-free sections. My daughter trailed silently behind, observing with that rare calm she reserves for the absurdities she refuses to obey. Emily, make sure everything's perfect, my mother said, handing Lily a printed guest list. Each name had dietary notes, times, and responsibilities highlighted. Start at 3 a.m., my sister snapped. Lily didn't flinch. She just smiled that tiny, measured smile I've seen since she was little. The one that says she's done being polite and isn't stepping back. Sure, she whispered, almost inaudibly. I felt a pang of pride. She was 16 and already refusing to be anyone's servant. I stayed quiet, letting the tension rise without smoothing it over. In therapy, we call this triangulation, dragging an innocent third party into a two-person conflict. My mother and sister had just tried it on Lily, expecting me to fold. Dinner prep quickly turned into a managerial briefing. My mother circled the kitchen like a hawk. Linens must be ironed, sections labeled, drinks chilled. Lauren chimed in with critiques. We don't need money help this year if Emily behaves, she said, her smile sharp as glass. Then, and gifts at 10 o'clock a.m., no quirky, cheap books. People want cash. I could already feel the old familiar leash of obligation wrapping tighter. Every yes I had given over the years. Apartment co-signing, emergency payments, school fees, surprise repairs, had built this exact moment. And I realized something. This time, I wasn't going to fold. At 6:02 p.m., we arrived with our coats half on, 40 place cards, glittering banners, and 2 coolers of champagne greeted us. Lauren didn't acknowledge me or Lily. She snapped her fingers at my daughter like a chef expecting Sue help. Aprons are in the drawer. Start at 3 o'clock a.m., she said, her tone precise. I caught Lily's eye. Quiet, calm, already standing her ground. Before I could intervene, my mother handed her the guest list with an extra pointed look. Do not be late. Last year the food was dry and people noticed. People noticed, my mother's favorite weaponized phrase. It translates to obey or be shamed. Lily just smiled small, deadly, like a cat that's finally chosen independence over safety. As I watched her, I felt a shift inside me. For the first time in years, I realized that my habit of absorbing impact and keeping peace had trained my daughter for compliance, and I refused to let that continue. I remained silent, observed the chaos, and thought of all the Christmases spent being the family's fixer. I remembered my first job as a school counselor, my mother calling about a dead fridge, co-signing leases for Lauren, driving my mother to doctor's appointments. Every yes reinforcing their expectation that generosity equals duty. Lily had been born when I was 25. Her father and I didn't make it, but we made peace. She chose to stay with me when her mother moved overseas, and I realized I was building not just her life, but the scaffolding for my mother and sister's demands around her. 2 summers ago, I had paid off my mother's credit card debt. 5 cards, interest gnawing like moths. Lauren's emergencies arrived in waves, always mirroring vacations or events. Every time I tried to set limits, Lauren called it therapy talk and rolled her eyes. This year, the group chat erupted in early December. Emily, buy groceries. Lily, prep cookies. Mom, supervise. Lauren, organize. I sent one reply. We will contribute what we can, but Lily is not kitchen staff. Lauren's immediate reply was, stop making drama. She needs to learn to serve her family. I put my phone down. Lily looked at me, wide-eyed. We're not doing that, right? We're not, I said, finally drawing a line. But let's try to keep the peace. I should have known peace wouldn't last. That night, I noticed a document on the table at my mother's. My name, my signature, a home renovation loan application. My hands shook. Fraud. Manipulation. I picked it up carefully, confronted Lauren quietly. Her smile was too fast, too rehearsed. Relax, Emily. Just a quote. But I knew better. I left the apartment with the roasting pan and my resolve intact. Confrontation would wait. For now, Lily's protection was my priority. At 1:00 a.m. on Christmas morning, Lily and I were at the airport, tickets in hand, backpacks slung over shoulders. The terminal was eerily quiet, the polished floors reflecting the green lights of our boarding passes. The family chat pinged relentlessly. I ignored it. Back home, 40 hungry relatives would arrive to a cold kitchen. But Lily and I, we were finally free from the cycle of obligation, the expectations, the micromanagement. I looked down at her, brushing her hair behind her ear. Window seat or aisle? Window, she said. Then, after a beat, softly, thanks for choosing me. Her trust hit me harder than any lecture about boundaries ever could. For the first time in years, I didn't have to be the fixer, the sponsor, the enforcer. For the first time, I could just be Emily, her mother, and nothing else. The first announcement crackled over the terminal speakers. I closed my eyes. My heart raced, not from the flight, but from stepping out of a story I had been cast in since childhood. Whatever awaited us back home, we wouldn't be participating. Not this time. And in that quiet moment, I felt something long buried, the possibility of choice. The Denver sunrise spilled gold across the snow, and for the first time in years, Emily Harris felt like she could breathe. Lily pressed her small hands against the car window, watching snowflakes dance over the streets. Mom, Lily said softly, I can't believe we actually did it. We're gone. We are, Emily replied, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter than necessary. And for the first time, this is our choice. The past few weeks had been a battle she hadn't realized she'd been preparing for her whole life. Every manipulation from her mother and Lauren had led to this precise moment. The quiet assertion of independence, the refusal to be weaponized, the refusal to let Lily be coerced. Back at her mother's apartment, Lauren would awaken to a cold kitchen and 40 furious relatives. But Emily and Lily were already creating their own little world, a bubble of peace carved out with courage, boarding passes, and a single suitcase. Their first stop was the small bed and breakfast Emily had booked months earlier. Nothing extravagant, just a room with a view of the frozen lake and a fireplace crackling in the common room. Emily watched Lily kick off her boots and race to the window. Look at it, Mom. It's like the world stopped just for us. Emily smiled, but felt the knot in her stomach tighten. Freedom always came with consequences. Her phone buzzed. Multiple missed calls from her mother, Lauren, even aunts and cousins. She didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she handed Lily a waffle menu at the tiny breakfast nook. Pick whatever you want, she said. Lily grinned and chose chocolate chip with extra syrup. Emily laughed. That's our kind of Christmas, she whispered, almost to herself. It wasn't just about escaping holiday obligations. It was about reclaiming herself. Emily thought back to every Christmas she had been coerced into performing, every time she had ignored her own needs for the sake of appearances. She realized how much of her life had been spent as a ghost in her own story. Her mind drifted to the document she had discovered weeks earlier, the home renovation loan forged in her name. That was the breaking point. Every yes she had given had been collected as debt against her freedom. Every hour she had spent helping was stitched into an expectation that had metastasized into control. Mom would never have understood if we just went along, she murmured to herself. Lily's eyes met hers, full of trust. Emily knew the weight of responsibility for this choice, for Lily's safety and happiness, would never let her falter. By mid-morning, the phone lines had erupted, voicemails stacked like winter firewood, urgent, angry, pleading. Emily ignored them, letting the calls die quietly in the snow. She didn't need to justify their absence, just as she hadn't needed to justify the years she had quietly paid, driven, and mediated for the family. They explored the little town, laughing at the way the ice glimmered under the sun, pretending the bed and breakfast pool's glass roof was a spaceship. Lily's laughter echoed through the small lobby, a sound Emily had realized she hadn't heard in years, pure, unpressured, free. At noon, curiosity nudged Emily. She checked the family group chat. The messages were chaotic. Photos of an empty buffet, Lauren holding a note like a flag, angry relatives comparing schedules and duties. And then, mercifully, unexpected allies appeared. Cousins questioning Lauren's authority, neighbors asking why a teenager had been forced to cook. Emily felt a quiet satisfaction. She hadn't started a war. She had simply removed herself from the battlefield. Clarity, she realized, was kindness. And this moment, this small victory, was both of them breathing for the first time. By the evening, Emily was back in their room, Lily asleep under the fluffy comforter, exhausted but happy. Emily wrote a single email to her mother and sister. Subject: boundaries. Effective immediately. Body: I will not be paying for events I do not plan. I will not be responsible for any debt that is not mine. Any application in my name will be met with a report to the bank and police if necessary. Lily is not to be asked directly for labor, favors, errands, or roles by any adult without my consent. Future holidays will be on our terms. No emojis, no chat, no oxygen for the drama, just clarity. Emily placed the laptop aside and exhaled. For the first time in weeks, she felt the tremor of freedom settle in her chest. Lily stirred, sleepily smiling. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. Emily kissed her forehead, whispering back, "Yes, we did it." And that night, in the small room far from the chaos of expectation, Emily Harris realized something profound. Sometimes the hardest choice is the kindest, and sometimes saying no is the bravest act of love. Returning home after their Denver escape felt surreal. Snow still clung to Emily Harris's coat, and Lily's hair smelled faintly of waffles and syrup. The quiet they had carved out had been brief, but transformative. A reminder that life could exist outside the endless demands of her family. But freedom comes with a price. By the time they stepped through their own front door, messages and missed calls had stacked like angry snowdrifts. Her mother, Lauren, and even distant relatives had all tried to reach her. Emily ignored them, letting them pile, feeling a strange calm in the silence of her decision. The first ripple came from an unexpected corner, Aunt Joanna. A private message appeared in Emily's inbox. "Emily, I can't believe you left Lily in the middle of everything. What are you thinking?" Emily typed carefully, her fingers steady. "I am thinking that Lily's safety and peace come before any family performance. We left because it was necessary. Please respect that." Her mother called next. The call went to voicemail, but the tone of panic in her messages was unmistakable. Lauren's text followed, escalating in both volume and anger. "You're being dramatic. You owe Mom. You've ruined everything." Emily read each one with measured detachment. She had rehearsed this moment, anticipated the fallout, and now she realized this was the cost of reclaiming control. She set boundaries in action, not just words. Autopays for her mother's cards were canceled. She froze credit monitoring on her accounts. Any attempt to open new lines of debt in her name would trigger immediate reporting. Lily was explicitly off limits for adult requests, errands, or labor. Emily's phone might ring 20 times a day, but her voice, her energy, and her daughter's time were hers to manage. Yet even as she acted, Emily felt the subtle sting of familial disappointment. Her mother had always seen her generosity as proof of love, and Lauren had weaponized it as currency. The shift in control was bound to hurt them, even if it healed her. Then came an unexpected twist. Not everyone was aligned against her. Cousins, neighbors, even distant aunts began questioning the older matriarch's manipulations. Photos circulated in group chats, Lauren in the kitchen, empty trays, handwritten notes, and the narrative subtly shifted. Some relatives quietly expressed solidarity with Emily. Some began to see that Lily had been treated like a staff member rather than a child. Emily watched this unfold with careful attention. She didn't celebrate. She documented, kept evidence, and waited. Her mother called with a sympathetic tone days later, softening her usual sharp edge. "Emily, I'm older now. I can't do everything." Emily's response was deliberate, calm. "I will help you manage what is necessary, but I will not fund events, nor allow Lily to be used for tasks without consent. Boundaries are for the well-being of everyone, not just me." Even Lauren wavered. Rent was late, a car impounded, a renovation stalled. The pattern of dependency was cracking, and Emily knew she had set the conditions for consequences to finally hit. She didn't gloat. She simply observed, learning to hold firm in the face of both guilt and pressure. Lily counted cash in the jar Emily had kept for her, a small weekend trip fund. When the total came together, Lily grinned. "We did it, Mom." "We did," Emily said, feeling an unfamiliar weight lift. No family performance, no obligation masquerading as tradition, just clarity, choice, and the quiet certainty that for the first time in her life, she had stepped outside the cycle that had bound her since childhood. By March, Emily had watched the fallout ripple through her family. Some began to adopt small changes, invites that were casual, meals without spreadsheets, chores left to the children's discretion. Others, like Lauren, doubled down, weaponizing the old systems of guilt. Emily remained steady. She enforced boundaries, documented interactions, and focused on Lily's well-being above all else. She realized that boundaries weren't cruelty. They were survival, and in survival, she discovered the unexpected, allies where she hadn't expected them, subtle acknowledgement that she had done the right thing, and a slowly building respect for the lines she refused to cross. By the end of spring, Emily reflected on the lessons. Generosity without boundaries had once been her default, a rope around her neck disguised as love. Now every yes had meaning, every act deliberate, every interaction conscious. And Lily had witnessed it, learning that freedom could coexist with love, that strength could be gentle, and that saying no could be the most loving act of all. For Emily Harris, Christmas had ended, but the consequences had just begun, and she was ready to face them with clarity, courage, and the quiet certainty of a mother protecting her child. Spring had arrived, but Emily Harris felt a chill lingering, not in the air, but in the pulse of her family. The boundaries she had set rippled outward, and reactions ranged from grudging respect to open hostility. Her phone buzzed constantly. Lauren's texts were barbed, accusing, and relentless. "You think you can just cut us off? Mom is devastated. You've turned Lily against the family." Emily read each one with precision. She didn't respond impulsively. She documented. She planned. She understood that this was the price of autonomy. The ones used to control you will fight to reclaim it. Then came the financial fallout. Lauren's rent went unpaid, the car was impounded again, and contractors halted work on renovations. Emily received another call from her mother, now tinged with worry. "Emily, she's struggling. You have to help her." Emily took a breath, choosing her words like a scalpel. "I've already assisted where it's reasonable. I will not fund poor planning or misuse of my resources. She must face the consequences of her choices, just as I do of mine." It was a line she hadn't felt comfortable drawing for decades, but it was necessary. For too long, Emily had absorbed the chaos, paid the bills, mediated crises, and ignored her own needs. Now, she was finally holding her ground. And the subtle, unexpected consequences were beginning to appear. Some relatives began sending small invitations: chili on a Sunday, a basketball game, a neighbor's potluck. No spreadsheets, no expectations. Just shared time and simple connection. Even Lauren's fortress of control began showing cracks. Emily noticed the subtle ways people questioned her sister's authority. Cousins asked quietly why Lily had been treated like staff. Neighbors wondered why Emily's generosity had been exploited. A small but growing number of people began seeing the truth. Emily's stand was not selfish, it was protective. Emily reflected on the jar of cash she had kept with Lily. It had grown, slowly, deliberately, representing not just money, but a metaphor for their freedom. Every dollar counted, every decision intentional. For the first time, Emily felt that she could provide for her daughter without being ensnared in a web of obligation and manipulation. One morning, while Lily counted the bills and organized her little fund, Emily realized something profound. The rebellion had been painful, chaotic, and messy, but it was teaching her daughter lessons no one else could. Boundaries, honesty, self-respect, and courage were now tangible, lived experiences. Later, Emily drafted another careful message to her mother and Lauren, reinforcing the rules. Any requests involving money, labor, or obligations for Lily must have my explicit consent. I will not engage in transactions or activities that manipulate or exploit our relationship. This is non-negotiable. Future holidays will be on our terms. It was firm, clear, and free of emotion, yet underneath, it carried decades of love, protection, and lessons finally learned. By June, Emily could see the first real signs of change. The family system, once so dependent on her compliance, had fractured. Some relatives gravitated toward honesty, lightness, and mutual respect. Others, like Lauren, doubled down on drama. But Emily no longer participated in the chaos. She had stepped aside, and in doing so, allowed natural consequences to unfold. For Lily, the world had shifted. She had witnessed a mother who would not yield to coercion, who would prioritize her well-being above social performance, who would teach her to stand firm without resentment. These lessons were subtle but profound. Lily learned that love and boundaries could coexist, that freedom could be lived deliberately, and that courage sometimes meant leaving the battlefield. Emily Harris looked at the summer sun filtering through her kitchen window, Lily laughing with a neighbor's child in the yard. She felt a quiet satisfaction, a rare kind of peace that came not from avoiding conflict, but from confronting it with clarity and courage. The family she had once served as the constant fixer was still there, but now she understood something vital. They were not her responsibility to control. Their chaos, their disappointment, and their failures were theirs. She would love them, yes, but she would not absorb their weight anymore. And for the first time, Emily felt the true power of choice, that protecting her child, living honestly, and standing firmly in her truth was not just an act of defiance, it was an act of love. Summer had fully arrived, and Emily Harris finally felt what she had been craving for years: quiet, uninterrupted breathing space. The snow of Denver was a memory, but the lessons lingered, hard-won, like footprints on a frozen lake. Lily ran through the yard, barefoot, chasing a butterfly, her laughter bright and unpressured. Emily watched from the porch, sipping coffee, feeling the weight of decades of obligation finally lift. The jar of cash for Lily's trip still sat on the shelf, full and untouched by anyone else's demands. It symbolized more than money. It symbolized freedom, choice, and a mother who had finally claimed both. The family fallout had stabilized in unexpected ways. Some relatives, like Aunt May and Cousin Amelia, had quietly adopted Emily's model. No demands, no coercion, just presence. They sent invitations that were optional, treats that were thoughtful but never expected. Others, like Lauren, continued to stew. But Emily no longer felt the compulsion to intervene. She had stopped carrying the weight of their expectations, and for the first time she understood the liberating power of boundaries. One afternoon, Emily received a tentative text from her mother. "Emily, can we have coffee? I want to understand, to start over." Emily paused, considering. For years, she had been trapped by guilt, performing love through sacrifice. Now, she replied simply, "We can, but only honestly. No manipulation, no expectations, just conversation." Her mother agreed. It was a small step, but a significant one. Emily realized that reconciliation wasn't about erasing the past. It was about setting terms where honesty and respect were non-negotiable. Meanwhile, Lily flourished in ways Emily had only dreamed. She learned that her needs mattered, that saying no was allowed, and that her mother's love was unwavering, even when the world demanded performance and obedience. The little girl who had once been pulled into adult battles now felt seen, heard, and free. Emily also noticed subtle shifts in herself. She laughed more easily, spoke her mind without fear, and finally allowed herself small joys she had long denied. Long walks at sunset, spontaneous ice cream trips, reading late into the night without guilt. The chaos of obligation had been replaced by deliberate, meaningful living. By the following winter, Emily and Lily returned to Denver, not for an escape, but for a small, personal celebration. No demands, no guest lists, just waffles, snow, and the warmth of a fire. Emily reflected on the journey, the forged loan, the manipulated holiday, the endless pressure to perform. Each obstacle had been a step toward clarity. Families don't change overnight. Emily still had a mother and a sister. She still loved them, but she no longer stood between them and the natural consequences of their choices. She had stopped explaining, justifying, and apologizing for holding her ground. She had learned the hardest truth. Love is not measured by sacrifice, but by presence, honesty, and protection. On Christmas morning, Lily padded into the kitchen, sleepy-eyed, carrying a tiny ornament she had made. "Mom, do we have to do a big family thing?" Emily smiled, brushing snowflakes from her coat. No, sweetheart, just us. 2 bowls, too many marshmallows. Window seat again, of course. Lily grinned, and Emily felt a profound sense of triumph. She had raised a girl who would never confuse compliance with love, who would understand that boundaries are kindness, and that choosing oneself and one's child is not selfish. It is survival. As Emily watched the sunlight bounce off the snow, she realized the truth she had carried for too long. After the loudness, there is quiet. After chaos, there is peace. And sometimes the bravest act of love is saying no. Her family might never fully understand, but she had written their story with integrity. Emily Harris held the pen firmly now, ready to continue a life defined by truth, protection, and the enduring joy of choosing her own path.